Welcome to First Mover, your first global look at today's action in the Bitcoin, blockchain, and digital asset space. I'm your host, Christine Lee. Joining me are my co-hosts, CoinDesk Managing Editor of Global Capital Markets, Lawrence Lewitton, as well as Executive Director of Global Content, new title for Emily Parker. Good morning, Emily and Lawrence.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's also a very special day. It's CoinDesk TV's birthday. We'll get into that in just a sec. Let's take a look at the markets right now. The CoinDesk Bitcoin price XBX index currently at $43,641. Bitcoin is up almost 2% over the past 24 hours. And the CoinDesk Ether price ETX index is at $3,090. ETH just dipping a bit, about 0.2%. And the DFX, CoinDesk DeFi index, is at 324, also retreating about 1.6% over the past 24 hours. The most reliable reference prices for institutions since 2014 are now published under the CoinDesk brand, trusted globally as the leader in crypto news, events, and data. So yes, it is CoinDesk TV's birthday today, and what a year it's been. I mean, I can't believe it's a year already. First of all, there's so much that has happened. I don't know, Emily, some of your favorite moments?
Well, we're going to get to a highlight reel at the end, so we can go over that. But I just was thinking just now that, like, in crypto time, 1 year is equal to 10 years when you think about how much has happened. So happy 10-year anniversary, you guys, because that's literally what it feels like.
Yeah. And Lawrence, and your thoughts?
Yeah, my hair grew a lot longer. Really what it is. I need more of a hair. I need more haircuts.
Yeah.
That's my big takeaway in all of this.
All right. Well, first, let's kick things off with our spotlight at CoinDesk.
The CoinDesk Spotlight is brought to you by Nexo, the place to earn on Bitcoin, Ethereum, and more.
All right, our first guest is a 24-year-old who found an incubator, Spatial Labs, with the aim of building Web3 applications and hardware in the metaverse. He has the backing of music mogul Jay-Z and his fund, Marcy Venture Partners. Please join us in welcoming Idris Sandhu. Welcome, Idris.
Peace, peace. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's just start off with, tell us about what your incubator is about.
Yeah, for sure. So Spatial Labs was a company that was founded on the basis of hardware. In this space that's still maturing, that we know of today as the metaverse, what it's going to be really defined by is the hardware that's created for the software to run on. And at Spatial Labs, we really take sort of this Alan Kay quote very seriously that Steve Jobs famously once quoted, saying, people that are serious about software should make their own hardware. So at Spatial Labs, we have a very, hardware first approach to how we think about the metaverse. And, although the software experiences today are still being defined and are great, our goal is really designing the hardware that interfaces with the human interaction.
So Idris, if I could just simplify that even more for the mainstream viewer, are you basically talking about like creating a better version of the Oculus, for example, which has a lot of room for improvement? When you say hardware, is that what you mean? Like those like basically what people are using to enter the metaverse?
Yes, absolutely. The different interfaces that people are using to enter the metaverse. And we're actually taking it a step further to say, the metaverse isn't just going to be, some goggles that you put on your face that assist you in escaping from reality. We're very much interested in augmented reality as well, right? So how can we take your reality that we feel like is already perfect and overlay different contexts on top of it to enhance, the information that you can process in real time, in real life. We want to kind of bring people together in reality using the power of augmented reality and mixed reality. And even in some cases, VR, not just like, strapping something to someone's head and being like, hey, this is sort of this new world that we've created. It's like, how can we use the power of technology to encourage more people to see the value in spending time in the real world?
Idris, let's just kind of turn to a different topic for a moment, kind of a bigger picture question. So you have the backing of Jay-Z, hip-hop legend Jay-Z, but there's also kind of a larger story here in that we have a lot of hip-hop artists getting into the crypto space in various forms. Some are investors, some are creating NFTs. And I'm just curious, like, is there any overlap or connection between crypto and hip-hop, like philosophically or thematically? I was just thinking about this, and I'm just curious what your take is.
Absolutely. I think hip-hop was initially created on the basis of, decentralization, if you really think about it, it's in itself, it's a startup, right? So you think about being able to take an already existing, thing that existed and being able to, pretty much create these different, inflection points within it, to be able to, create a new culture. And I think what we've seen is, within hip hop, um, people of color are often, we're segmented to being sort of the consumers and not the creators of that which to be consumed. So, the spending power is incredibly high, but when it comes to, production, our production rate is very low. So we consume more than we create. And I think hip hop in of itself, has, created so much value, today in the world. But if you kind of think about, where that value is created, it's on platforms that weren't really created by people that come from within hip hop. So, we now sit within a state where we're like, all right, well, how can we make sure that the next MPC or the next microphone or the next, AR, VR device that's going to, be propelled by hip hop in of itself, sort of gets to sit within a space where the people that are creating it and understand the value that can be created by utilizing sort of the hardware, get to also create the companies.
Mm-hmm. It just reflecting on Black History Month, I was wondering if you could reflect on the state of diversity in crypto right now.
Absolutely. It's interesting because, as somebody that's been in the tech space for nearly almost a decade now, something I realize is, although we say diversity is what we're looking for, we're actually looking for representation. I liken diversity to being, taking a specific variation of a plant and just asking for that plant or that tree to have a different color, right? Sometimes the roots are, fractalized, and we have to change the roots, not the actual color of. It's like having a house that's like, doesn't have specific, structural integrity, and then just changing the color. So I think for us, it's really about representation. What I'm looking for in tech, is representation. Not just, we need more people that look like this doing the same thing, but to really show people like technology is still at it. I mean, this mainstream technology is still at its infancy. We're barely, at the tip of the iceberg. There's so many different innovative use cases and applications of technology that we haven't seen yet. And through the lens of hip hop, we can see a very, very impactful sort of ecosystem generated from it when the people that are within hip hop, the people that are within culture, assist in building the tools rather than just using the tools that were created for them.
Interesting. I mean, the interesting thing with what you're saying is this: is that so you're 24 years old, and you said you were in the business now for almost a decade. You've been consulting with large companies since you were a kid, since before you could drive. Now you have new investors coming in who might not come from the tech space. So what kind of pressure do you face in dealing with new investors to the space? And what kind of pressures do they put on you, either for their return on their investment or what they want to see you produce? And how is it different from the usual tech crowd that you were used to working with before?
Yeah, 1000%. I think, for me, what attracts investors, and partners to what I do is my hardware first approach. I think a lot of people in this space have been limited to the bandwidth of information related to software. So majority of people are building software companies. I think my narrative around this conversation in tech is really, around hardware first approach. We have more leverageability by focusing on the hardware, and being able to create, software experiences around that hardware that other people can build on top of. I mean, it's the same thing that, a lot of large companies do today. It's just we haven't been included in those conversations. So I think as it relates to investor relations and partners, I generally feel very trusted, with my investors and the partners that I work with because of the sort of the mission and vision that I'm on, which is, hardware first approach, hitting critical mass with sort of the stuff that we do, to be able to inspire a whole new generation to know the possibilities that, it's not just about, I could build this really cool app on the iPhone, but I can, in fact, invent the iPhone in of itself.
So speaking of the hardware, where are you manufacturing, or where are you planning to manufacture? And are you seeing any hiccups at the moment because of the pandemic and what have you?
Yeah, so in other spaces, we're experiencing chip shortages and production delays. I'm proud to say that we're actually manufacturing in the States. Our first product is going to be manufactured in the United States, which, I think is very great, especially for, a Gen Zer to really show other Gen Zers that it is possible to, manufacture technology out here. And the way that we're doing it is,
where in the US?
We'll be sharing more into that as we approach launch date. But one of the first product that we're actually launching through Spatial Labs is hardware. And it's a play on words of the word hardware in of itself. We spell it HARDWEAR, which kind of hints as to what kind of technology it is. So we really look forward to sharing more within the coming months.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Idris, so much for joining us. Also looking forward to seeing you at Consensus by CoinDesk as one of our speakers in Austin this June. All right, that was Spatial Labs founder and creative director Idris Sandhu. Coming up, fundraising efforts by Canadian truckers protesting COVID restrictions have been shut down by GoFundMe. Now they're turning to Bitcoin.
Hi, I'm Christine Lee.
Zach Seward.
I'm Michael Casey.
I'm Christy Harkin.
I'm Isaiah Jackson.
I'm Serena Lynn.
Hey, this is Will Foxley.
I'm Teresa Santos.
Hi, I'm Lawrence Fullerton.
Hi, I'm Dorian Wayne.
I'm Nikolai Day.
Hi, I'm Kevin Worth.
My name is Naomi Brockwell.
I'm Jordan Muthra.
Hi, I'm Galen Moore.
Hi, I'm Brad Count.
I'm Pete Paschal.
Hi, I'm Jen Sanasi.
You're watching.
And you are watching.
And you're watching CoinDesk TV.
Let's have a live look at Bitcoin. The CoinDesk Bitcoin price XPX index is currently at $43,664. Bitcoin is making an advance of almost 2% over the past 24 hours. The CoinDesk Ether price ETX index is at 3,096. ETH also coming up with a 0.2% gain. And the new DFX CoinDesk DeFi index is right now at 324. DeFi, though, taking a step back about 1.4%. All right, well, the mayor of Ottawa declaring a state of emergency as Canadian truckers protest COVID restrictions and ramp up demonstrations in the Canadian capital. GoFundMe has shut down $8 million worth of fundraising amid police complaints, which has prompted the Freedom Convoy to seek charity elsewhere, including crowdfunding platform Tallycoin, which claims to be powered by Bitcoin. Joining us now to discuss is Anthony Diorio, co-founder of Ethereum and CEO of crypto wallet Jax. Welcome, Anthony. Thanks for joining us. So, at first, these truckers were protesting a vaccine mandate for drivers crossing the U.S.-Canada border. Now they want all COVID restrictions dropped. So what's the mood in Canada? How do people feel about these truckers?
Oh, well, that's a pretty generalized statement. I can only tell you what I kind of feel about it. And there's going to be people with all types of different appointments or different ways that they're thinking about this. So it's going to be a wide range of thoughts on this. For me, it's the specifics to me is that it's good to see movement sometime emerge. It's good to see people that are saying they're not happy with certain things. And I think it started out with the mandates, and it's probably have a bunch of other people stepping in to bring other types of concerns or things to the table. But the mood changes from person to person about what's actually happening here. From people on one side are saying that they should not be allowed to go and just take over the capital, and to others saying that they're not causing any harm or anything right now. So I think there's probably somewhere in the middle there that the majority will be thinking. But for me, it's good to see sometimes people that aren't happy. They're bringing forward their displeasure, and I don't think anybody's died, and it is causing a lot of havoc in Ottawa, and I think other cities now as well. But it's these types of things I think that if there's a certain repercussion of something, it is good to see these things happen so that people may think about things a little bit differently and know that this could happen with other things that potentially become imposed.
Yeah, certainly a mixed bag of some obviously sympathize with the truckers, others are concerned about potential havoc. So the truckers have raised money through GoFundMe. The page was shut down. Now they're trying to raise money through Bitcoin on Tallycoin. They've raised about 10 BTC last time I checked. There could be more now over the past week. I wonder what your thoughts are on, how they're raising money through Bitcoin now.
So, platforms like funding platforms are a tool in order to get value or funds into the hands of people to carry out some type of purpose, whether it's done with Bitcoin or whether it's done in traditional means like something through GoFundMe. Each has its downsides, each has its positive things and things that need to be considered. On GoFundMe's side, you have tie-ins to Rails, which the average person is able to use. It can be funded through different mechanisms. And on the Bitcoin side, maybe a little more challenging for the truckers to use Bitcoin. I'm still not sure if it's been thought out very well how they're going to decide who gets it. But that's also the same problem with the GoFundMe. It's like who's making these decisions? How do you build trust on the people that are going to be carrying it out? And when I see this Bitcoin site, I mean, I look for signs of things that build trust, and I don't see it on this site. I mean, it's a paragraph that basically says let's fund this freedom convoy, but I mean, who's behind it? I know it's been come up people there, but how are they planning on getting and distributing these funds? Are the truckers going to be the type of people that'll be able to utilize Bitcoin? How would they convert? There's so many other questions that emerge, and a lot of times these things, if not done properly, you know, we got 4,000 people that have committed to this Bitcoin raise here, but there's a lot of logistics and variables that I don't see that would allow me to provide trust in the site and trust that they're going to actually do something more meaningful than just you know, raising up a vote for Bitcoin here because it solves the problem or makes GoFundMe obsolete, which I don't think is the case. Each things have goods and bads to it. Each side's have things, and both are going to struggle with how to disperse money into the hands of the people that are going to be utilizing it.
Yeah, I think you know, I did want to ask you about that because how do you find signs for where the funds will ultimately go, if at all? I mean, as you said, you don't quite know. Like, what do you look for? Because, I mean, can anyone just show up with a trucker hat and say, "Well, my name is Vitalito Castro. I live at 24 Sussex, and you know, please give me a Bitcoin." Is that how it works, or like,
how does it work? Even with GoFundMe, I mean, how is the distribution going to ensure that funds are being put into the hands of someone that, you know, what is the criteria? Could someone just join this thing just as a way to get money? So there's logistical issues in either way that it's being done. But what I like to see is a website or a site that actually shows the people that you can build trust with. It shows messaging on the site of how we're going to do these things. And it really does not do a very good job, at least the Bitcoin one and the GoFundMe, of building trust on the people behind it to be able to carry out the mission of getting these funds in the hands of the people that they really want to. And when I don't see those signs, it does lead me to concern that the people doing it haven't thought forward of that, because if they did, they'd bring that forward that to get more support, because that would build trust. And in both mechanisms, it's about trust of, should I be giving this to them and think that it will be utilized the way it is, or is this just a press release that's being utilized here to just gain more attention for a particular company, a particular project, a particular system even, and maybe the benefits of the system haven't been thought through very well. I don't know how many truckers are going to be able to use Bitcoin.
Well, I mean, is there anything in the back end that we could look at to see where things are headed, or, you know, addresses, wallets, et cetera, where we could look at it and say, oh, you know, it's going here, it's going there, or is that right now not? Is that okay?
I think the easiest thing would be the organizers to come out and be more transparent, be more visible, more data, more information on the sites of what their intentions are, what they plan to do. Because, I mean, they got 4,300 people that have contributed here right now. Now, is that 4,300? Could it be one person giving in 10 cents 50 times? These is another downsides of these types of systems. You don't actually know who's giving the money in. So these 4,300 contributors may not even be that. And I'm not saying it is or isn't. It's saying that the systems do not provide for things potentially with transparency and other trust systems. And I don't really like the site because it's not making me trust it, because I don't see certain things I'd like to see on a site like that.
So Anthony, I guess just to rephrase what Lawrence was sort of asking, is there like a blockchain fixes this element to this problem, right? You know, I mean, because the whole idea, you know, is that like there should be ways to sort of like track where money is going, and I mean, is that in the future somewhere? Do you think for these for things like this in the future?
I think the first steps is to build trust with the people behind it by coming out and actually stating why they're doing this for their cause, what they're going to do with the money, what is their process for it. I don't think that needs any type of technical solution to start out with those things. On the technical side afterwards, if you want to see where things are going, I mean, it could require registering of people to certain things, and then there's going to have people that are going to push back against having to provide identifications and things like that. So there are solutions that will come out of these things, but there's got to be some type of balance with these, and there's not one solution that's going to fit everything here. And you have two sides of it. You have a system that can be shut down like GoFundMe, which is what's happened here because it's not decentralized and because there could be amounts of pressure that are coming on GoFundMe to do this. Heck, it could have been the organizer that said, man, we didn't expect all this amount of money. We don't want to be responsible now for deciding how this is going to go out. Who knows? Then on the other side, it's having people that are going to anonymously be able to donate. You potentially don't know too much about the people behind it. It's very difficult to see where the money is going to be spent. And yeah, technology solutions have to come out, but it's not just technology. It's also how do individuals realize that to build trust and do it, they need to be leaders. And then to be leaders, they need to be visible. And I don't see any of that on the Bitcoin side here.
Yeah, to your point, Anthony, I was just looking at the Tallycoin site, and you know, there's been a couple people opening up Canadian trucker charity sites. Another one I see is from Franco Filippelli, and he writes, I help truckers set up Bitcoin wallets and show how to use Bitrefill to buy stuff with your Bitcoin. I do this because I'm a trucker and want others to see how easy it is to use, and because I am Satoshi Nakamoto, who is John Galt. So exactly, I mean, who are these people and how are these funds being distributed?
You don't know who to, it's not easy, you don't know how to trust. And I guess my whole purpose for wanting to come in and talk about this is because there's a lot of risks and people might not understand it, the people that are contributing. If they are trying to contribute to something that they believe in, maybe they're not understanding that at the end of the day that it's not going to be as easy, and there are elements that are going to stop that from happening.
There are other fundraising efforts in other areas. For instance, Julian Assange, WikiLeaks and his allies have formed Assange DAO. They've raised about $38 million so far to aid the founder of WikiLeaks and for his court battles. So I wonder if forming a DAO is any better, or maybe there should be a trucker DAO, or it runs into the same problems.
Yeah, I mean, you could have rules that are built into the DAO in order to facilitate things and make governance on it better. And yeah, there's definitely ways that can be done. At the end of the day, it's still going to come back to trust. And the more anonymous things are, the less trust is there going to be in it. The more people put their faces on things, the more that they might get exposed or they might have trouble. So it's somewhere in the middle that has to come together here in order to create better systems that are going to have benefits of both sides of it. And it's not a device of this or that mentality. I think it has to be something that taking the benefits of both sides to bring it together.
All right, Anthony, thank you so much for. Oh.
No, I was just going to ask. You mentioned before what it means for Canadians in general seeing this kind of a protest. I'm wondering how the tech community itself in Toronto, in Ontario, and actually also across the country are looking at this. I mean, obviously, there's a divide between what goes on in Toronto and what goes on in Ottawa, just in terms of mentality. But is there a thought? Is there some sort of united idea that's happening with the tech communities in Canada? I mean, it might be difficult to find out, but what's your sense?
Yeah, that's really something that I just can't provide any insight on, and say that there's a generalized consensus on the tech community. It comes back again to all Canadians. It's just too generalized for me to really be feeling. I haven't felt anything in that aspect of tech coming forward recently over the last few weeks when this is happening and saying that tech should be doing this or there's a need for that. So sorry, but I just can't provide any details on that.
All right. Well, Anthony, thank you so much for joining us. I know you're really passionate about seeing what is happening in the nation's capital. So thanks for joining us and sharing your 2 cents. That was Anthony Diorio, co-founder of Ethereum and CEO of Jax. All right, coming up, we'll check in with CoinDesk Global Policy and Regulation Managing Editor, Nick Day.
Posting art on Twitter. I had a physical painting I did, and I made a little website. A few months pass, and I get an email. I love your art. I'm interested in digital assets. Do you know what NFTs are? And I read that, and I was like, what?
And trying to explain to people that we can have these collectible digital assets that you can own, and then the digital assets, like game assets, is also a growing sector.
Remember the ape thing? I was like, oh my God, I need to get in.
You can NFT anything that is inspiring to you.
This space has changed my life.
And then I started looking under the hood. I like the potential and the freedom
that the NFT world gives you.
I want to be with the forerunners that are pushing the change to how not just musicians, but how creatives are going to sustain themselves.
In the non-fungible joking show, if this ends up being huge, it would change the world.
What's up, everybody? This is Spencer Dinwiddie.
And I'm Sola Cisse.
And this is New Money, brought to you by CoinDesk.
All I hear, go get the money. So I go get it. Hate means I do something right. So I'ma let him. Yeah, I'ma let him. Yeah, I'ma let him. I hit the nail on the head. Yeah, I'ma let him.
What we'll see is money not only being exchanged for this digital currency, but the frictionless movement across borders. It's gonna be able to flow as easy as a text message.
Staying true to yourself, right? Like, you've always been true to yourself.
I just want to share that with everybody. You know, you could be yourself in full capacity.
It's our duty to take our visions and be fearless in our pursuit.
Be my most authentic self and show people that, look, I'm an athlete, and yes, I'm also a part of the LGBT community.
My goal is to have, my own NFT, my own entire IP, like my own everything.
How do you think, blockchain and crypto impacts the way you think about it?
I think everyone has like some sort of like,
So like, how'd you get into Bitcoin?
it's like asking someone if they smoke. It's like, it's like, yo.
Embracing where the world is going, and when the whole world shut down, we saw just how important tech was.
It was more so of my style and the foods that I cooked that kind of pushed me. I wanted to live the lifestyle of an athlete or an artist while doing what I love.
Having that open mind, having that flexibility just allows you to be of so much more service to, youth or society in general.
Gamers, maybe it's because you guys just hustle different.
Anything you want to be great at, you got to put hours and hours in every single day.
Welcome back. Time to check in with CoinDesk Global Policy and Regulation Managing Editor Nick Day, who is also the editor of CoinDesk's The State of Crypto newsletter. Good morning, Nick. So what are you watching?
Good morning. Well, in a couple of minutes, we're going to be kicking off our coverage of the House Financial Services Committee hearing on the President's Working Group report on stablecoins. So we're going to be hearing lawmakers ask Undersecretary Nellie Liang of the U.S. Treasury Department questions about this report, including what risks stablecoins might pose to the U.S. financial system, as well as the recommended regulatory framework.
Nick, the other thing that happened, of course, is XRP popped on some developments in the SEC case against Ripple. What's that about?
Yeah, so it looks like the judge in the SEC case against Ripple, which, for those of you who have not seen this part of the show before, the SEC sued Ripple at the end of 2020, and the case has been in this kind of administrative back and forth over the past year. Right now, it looks like we're still kind of in that process. The different attorneys for each party are trying to, define the scope of discovery, so the material that is provided to both the plaintiffs and the defendants. And a judge ruled recently, in the past week, that some documents can remain sealed at the defendant's request, but other documents should not be. And one of these documents seems to be legal opinion secured by Ripple ahead of it selling XRP way back in the day. The defendants seem to believe that this document will indicate that the SEC, or sorry, that Ripple, excuse me, acted in good faith and did not try to sell securities when it began selling or facilitating XRP sales over the past several years. Although I will admit, this is a pretty interesting argument to me because we've seen this kind of before with the simple agreement for future tokens framework that, back in 2017, SAFs were meant to try and sell tokens without incurring the SEC's wrath, and the SEC wasn't really impressed. So I'm curious to see whether or not this argument holds up.
Nick, I believe there's another hearing tomorrow that you're watching out for.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting as well. The Senate Agriculture Committee will be holding a hearing on digital assets, and the Ag Committee specifically oversees the CFTC, which is the other big regulator that we've been talking about, mostly when it comes to futures. Now, CFTC Chairman Ross Benham has already said in the past that he believes his agency might be the right regulator for the crypto spot markets, which doesn't currently have a federal regulator. And he will be testifying tomorrow. I imagine this is going to come up. And right now, like I said, there's no real federal regulator at the spot market level. The SEC has kind of tried to take this jurisdiction by saying that a lot of the cryptocurrencies that trade on exchanges look like securities. Chairman Benham's argument is that the trading volume, the bulk of which is Bitcoin and Ether trading pairs, are not securities because they're commodities, because there's futures products built on top of these. And so his agency might be the right choice. And I think we're going to see, just arguments about whether or not this makes sense tomorrow, although I think it's too soon to tell whether or not it's going to lead to any legislation that will actually define the scope of this jurisdiction.
All right, Nick.
Agencies fight for all safe.
Thanks for the update, Nick. All right, but stay with us because it's CoinDesk TV's 1 year anniversary. 1 year ago today, we aired our first show. It has been an incredible ride, an incredible honor and privilege to wake up every morning with the three of you and our whole team here at CoinDesk, as well as you, the viewers out there. One of our producers, Doreen, put together a clip for a look back down memory lane. So let's have a look. Welcome to First Mover, your first global look at today's action in the Bitcoin, blockchain, and digital asset space.
Welcome to Community Crypto on CoinDesk TV.
You're watching The Hash on CoinDesk TV.
Welcome to Money Reimagined. This is new money.
This is all about Bitcoin.
This is NFT All-Stars.
Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill may be headed toward the Senate. How will this impact the crypto markets?
I feel like all of those scenarios are kind of priced in. Maybe it's a little higher.
I think there are reasons why the price of Bitcoin is rising so fast and why companies are replacing, dollar holdings with Bitcoin holdings. So just this morning, Christine, I looked at the money supply. So did you know that the money supply in the United States since the coronavirus pandemic started is up 25%?
I became interested in Bitcoin when I became concerned about the compilation of debt that we're doing and racking up in the Congress. And currently, we're going to add another 1.9 trillion to the debt.
MicroStrategy today announced that they were putting another $1 billion into Bitcoin, while yesterday on its earnings call, Square announced that it was putting $170 million into another buy.
It's not irresponsible for any corporate executive to convert a weaker asset into a stronger asset it's not irresponsible to avoid burning 25% of your shareholders' money every year.
And for somebody like Elon Musk, who knows that there's a market impact, to manipulate, first take an individual position to Bitcoin, pump the price up, and then say that Tesla has invested and Tesla doesn't make money yet, it's also irresponsible and it's market manipulation.
I think that being disappointed in Elon Musk is a just punishment for caring about what he said in the first place. But clearly he's not, a cryptocurrency expert, and it's not his forte. He seems to be having a lot of fun trolling a lot of people on Twitter, and I think, getting rankled about that is kind of your problem.
I just became a millionaire by spending all my money on Dogecoin.
YOLO! I don't know even that Dogecoin would fit within the SEC's gambit, depending on whether or not one would consider purchases and sales to be securities purchases and sales, but don't come complaining to the government if you lose your money.
I think meme coins should definitely be taken seriously. I mean, first, on the most basic level, there is real money behind them. So this is not fake money, this is real money. And as our guests can talk about, people can actually make millions off of these coins, right? So they are serious on that level. But I think, this show is called Community Crypto, and this is about community-driven investment. And I think that's a really interesting and important phenomenon. And, these meme coins are great examples of that.
Coinbase will have competition, has competition, and that competition will increase. But I also think that Coinbase is now going to be able to effectively compete with not just the other crypto companies, but the Wells Fargos and the JP Morgans of the world. And that's just a much bigger market.
Coin stock goes live on NASDAQ. What they did was a voluntary earnings call where they shared their latest numbers, and they dropped some large numbers on the world.
JP Morgan's coming on board. Morgan Stanley already announced one. Wells Fargo just announced one. And slowly but surely, there'll be more and more people in the system, a result of which is going to push up the price.
Money. Can you please explain what's an NFT?
The fact that SNL is covering NFTs, what does that guys tell you? Are NFTs going more mainstream, or is this the signal of a bubble?
I think that NFTs are really such an interesting gateway into crypto. Like, I keep thinking about all the waves people would get involved with crypto. I'm like the merchant adoption and all of the remittances and all of these things that never really happened. And then suddenly you get like artwork and all these artists pile on.
Just because there is NFTs doesn't mean that you're going to slap some pretty piece of art on there and then you're Michelangelo. There's a lot of work that goes into actually even having a chance to succeed.
I think it's a bubble. I do think there is a bubble, and I think where we are at in that bubble, or if it's not a bubble now, I do believe it probably will be a bubble at some point because there's just so many people rushing into the space.
Studios sometimes force feed you content. Like there is a world where your options are oddly limited, where they try to predict what it is that you're gonna like, and so you kind of get like these 7 options, and that is what you get. And so we're trying to, I guess, find a model where we're going to allow, by people being able to purchase the NFTs, to dictate what they want to watch.
The People's Bank of China announced that virtual currency-related business activities are legal. So on that news, of course, we have Bitcoin dumping 4% and a whole lot of red across the broader market.
So I think OTC platforms that are operated from the big exchanges, the Huobi and so on, and Binance, they will close down. They will stop offering their services to the Chinese mainland users.
I'm wondering, where will they go?
A lot of the hash rate migrated to other parts of the world, like Central Asia with Kazakhstan and parts of North America. There was some hash rate that stayed behind, and that has once again been cracked down and shut off again.
We were thinking of building Bitcoin City.
Bitcoin is now legal tender in El Salvador, a world first just 3 months after the Bitcoin law passed the country's legislature.
We're very enthusiastic as a government and President Bukele leadership. They're afraid and they're concerned because if we succeed, as I said, a lot of countries are looking at us and they will follow, our leadership.
We're going to dive into what's going on with Apple and I've always been, the torchbearer for privacy and promoting great policies. And at the start of the year, they promoted something that would stop apps tracking you on their devices. They copped a lot of flack from especially companies like Facebook, who said this is going to ruin their business model. And it seems that they have now actually walked that back substantially.
I think this is supposed to be a family-friendly show, so I'll just say this is BS. It's incredibly disappointing. And, you mentioned Facebook revenues, for people who haven't been paying attention, we actually did see huge hits to Facebook and Snapchat and a few other tracking companies' revenues after iPhones made this change. So you can only assume that that Cook is getting some pushback from his buddies in Silicon Valley and that this was something of a product of that.
What about Bitcoin ETFs? That's still something that has not been approved in the United States.
Ready for an traded product. People are looking for ways through our regulated securities markets to access Bitcoin.
I don't see it getting resolved. I don't see the first ETF coming until we have the regulatory environment to approve it. And also we've solved the ESG issue.
From our seat, we're certainly wanting to be ready and willing to engage in creating an ETF when regulatory approvals, start to pop up.
Breaking news, folks. Bitcoin, the world's largest cryptocurrency by market capitalization, hitting a new all-time high above $66,000.
Futures, in fact, we think are, if anything, a better place for price discovery. The regulatory aspect and the ETF wrapper make it a very compelling alternative.
Well, we filed a Freedom of Information Act request, and we got something like 230 pages worth of internal documents from the Trump administration regarding its crypto policy. Sometimes you file a FOIA and it works.
We've had this impression that the Trump administration was relatively light touch on crypto, and to me these emails kind of maybe cement that, because there were a lot of emails where you had people either requesting to speak with someone at the Treasury Department or specifically with Steven Mnuchin, and a lot of these emails we got internal records where staffers were saying, we don't think that this person needs to be able to speak with someone at Treasury, or, let's throw this to, such and such deputy.
I have to say, I thought it was kind of funny that Jared Kushner was the one who first brought stablecoins to the attention of the administration. He's not the guy I would have expected to have started that whole email train of, hey, we should look into stablecoins.
There hasn't been platforms created by people of color for people of color. The fact that you're making that available to everybody through what you're doing, I don't even think we realize the magnitude of that.
We're trying to remove intermediaries, and that's kind of what we see as the premise in crypto in general, especially Bitcoin.
I got into Bitcoin as a joke in 2016. I copped 2 Bitcoins for like $600, or no,
I hate you.
maybe 3 for like 600. And I actually lost my password to my Coinbase.
I've been in this space for 4 years, flying around the world, trying to explain to people what NFTs are and what it means to collect them. And honestly, I'm not even sure I know, but today we've got a bunch of sharp folks on, and I'm really excited to hear what you guys think. Like, what is an NFT to you, and what does it even mean to own an NFT or to collect one?
Non-fungible tokens. Non-fungible is a term to describe things that can't be exchanged one for one with each other.
We like it. And those songs are more special because we feel like we earn them with our clapping. So an NFT is sort of like clapping for an encore, but it might be something else.
Hi, I'm Christine Lee.
Zach Seward.
I'm Michael Casey.
I'm Christy Harkin.
I'm Isaiah Jackson.
I'm Serena Lynn.
Hey, this is Will Foxley.
I'm Teresa Santos.
Hi, I'm Lawrence Lewitton.
Hi, I'm Dorian Wayne.
I'm Nicholas Day.
Hi, I'm Kevin Worth.
My name is Naomi Brockwell.
I'm Jordan Muthra.
Hi, I'm Galen Moore.
Hi, I'm Brad Count.
I'm Pete Paschal.
Hi, I'm Jen Sanasi. You're watching. And you are watching.
And you're watching CoinDesk TV.
Wow, so much has happened in 1 year. First thoughts, Nick, on seeing that.
It's crazy. It's and just looking back at just kind of using that as a marker for timestamps. a lot of the stuff we've been talking about didn't even, we weren't even thinking about a year ago. Just
Yeah.
this amount of discussion around all the regulatory issues, from my perspective, but also just a year ago, the fact that a country was going to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender was kind of like not even on the table to be discussed. That was not something we were thinking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, so much happened with the crackdown in China, Bitcoin and hitting all-time highs, just under $69,000. NFTs were the big news story of the year. And Emily, what stood out for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was just like watching a really cool historical timeline of crypto over the past year. I mean, you could see, as Nick said, like the different regulatory issues that we were commenting on, meme coins, and then you could kind of see the slow build of NFTs, just how NFTs became a bigger and bigger topic. So, if you want kind of a year history of crypto, go back and watch, a year of CoinDesk TV, and you'll really see like how these trends emerged.
Lawrence?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, stablecoins always a favorite topic of mine. So that the fact that that's now on the floor is, exactly the kind of thing I would have expected. I'm just glad that happened. Some of the interviews that were left out that were some of my favorite. Of course, our interview with Do Kwon has to be one of my favorites.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and,
such a pleasure.
Brian Brooks, Jeremy Allaire, Pat Toomey.
SPF though, SPF. I really gotta love me some SPF.
Sam Trabucco.
We also interviewed a Doge avatar. We've had some avatars that
also.
We had a few avatars.
Also, goody.
The only place you'll ever see that.
Yep.
Only on CoinDesk.
Only on CoinDesk TV. And I was an animated character. Dream fulfilled.
That was
all right.
Cool.
Nick, thanks so much for joining us. That was CoinDesk Regulation and Policy Managing Editor Nick Day.
The Crypto Markets Update is brought to you by KuCoin, the best place to find the next crypto gem.
So what's first mover without a little bit of markets? We got to talk that now with, and joining us now is to talk about crypto markets is Urban Gunn Sir. He's the founder and CEO of Ava Labs in New York. Welcome. If you guys know what Avalanche is, welcome, Emin.
Hello, good morning.
Hi, how are you? So, I got to ask you, you have a
happy birthday to you all. And
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. 16, 17 more years and we will be able to drive. Of course, a lot of DeFi runs off of Avalanche. So what are you seeing right now happening in the markets from your perspective? It's a very unique perspective to be in. What do you think is going on recently? We saw this downturn and now a bounce. How is it affecting you, for instance?
So let me give you a little bit of information about my vantage point. I used to be a professor at Cornell University until very recently. And that put me in a unique position where people come to academics right before they enter the market. So I've had a chance to see and foresee the big boom that we had about a year and a half, 2 years ago. I knew that the hedge funds were coming before 6 months before they came in. Right now, I would say that about, again, 6 months ago, I started hearing from sovereign wealth funds and pension funds. Mostly Canadian pension funds because their legal infrastructure is different, but they're coming. So there's more institutional money coming into the space, and it takes a little longer for these entrants to actually make their appearance on the scene because of the various different regulations they're under. But they're coming, and the space is going to grow. So I'm really, really bullish in the long term. And these, occasional corrections, these bearish downturns, they're actually very good. If you're in the business of building infrastructure, some of this taking the froth out of the market is great. It's also a great way to differentiate the coins that work from the ones that don't.
Really fascinating what you say about the sovereign wealth funds. That's the first time I've heard of that coming in, after the hedge funds. But I wonder, can you detect market manipulation at all when you see these volatile price swings and thin volumes?
Market manipulation is something beyond my expertise area. I'm a distributed systems expert, so I build infrastructure. We build, working blockchains, and I'm behind the Avalanche blockchain. So what happens in the markets, manipulation, etc., that's beyond me.
So it might be beyond where your scope, but nonetheless, do you think that some of what goes on in DeFi, do you think it either helps combat it, or do you think there might be a little bit of a problem even in DeFi where big players can potentially push around the price of coin?
Oh, so from a technical perspective, I can speak to market manipulation and traces of it. So let's actually talk about that for a second. Often what happens in this space, in our space, is as we go to regulators and say, hey, we would like to do this, that, and the other, they come back to us and say, hey, your markets are not fair and square. They are manipulated. They have this problem, that problem. And to some extent, historical facts point out that centralized marketplaces do have issues. We saw this with various lawsuits against various markets in the past, and we saw it again with the Mt. Gox collapse and so on. The OGs who've been in this space know that some of the historic facts did take place. But these assets lend themselves to things that Wall Street cannot do. We can build decentralized exchanges that are free from manipulation. We can build trustless exchanges that rule out categorically by building rules into the fabric of the network that the regulators are concerned about. So whereas Wall Street is based on post-facto auditing, we can build things that are correct by construction. So that makes me really bullish. And I think that puts us in a very good shape to actually address and combat these issues.
Maybe,
now,
Evan,
the last issue that they might have with DEXs is that the DEXs lend themselves to what we call MEV, or what some people call MEV, which is extractable value by participants to the system. This is a form of, this often occurs in the form of front running. It might occur in the form of sandwich trades and so forth. And there are now ways to actually combat MEV as well. There are chains whose protocols are so fast that the MEV opportunities are lower for the participants. There are also techniques that people are employing so as to reduce the MEV that's available to insiders. So I'm really, really proud to be part of some of this. The Avalanche system is really, really fast and allows us to extract or to reduce the amount of MEV available to the participants. And also we're working on brand new exchanges and DEXs and new structures on top of us so as to reduce those. So very soon we're going to find ourselves in a position where we turn to the regulators and say, we are way ahead of you. Everything you want to do, we can do better.
So maybe, Evan, it'd be helpful for our audience to understand, maybe you can give a quick explainer of what Avalanche is.
Oh, Avalanche is a new blockchain, a new layer one. It came out of Cornell University about a year and a little bit ago. It's a brand new mainnet, and it's based on a couple of groundbreaking ideas. One of them is a brand new consensus protocol that scales. It's unlike every other system out there. It's the third biggest breakthrough in the space of distributed systems. The first one was what we call classical protocols. The second is obviously proof of work and Nakamoto's brilliant invention. And the third one in this space is Avalanche. And the second big idea behind Avalanche is its notion of subnets. It's not a single monolithic one-size-fits-all solution, but it's a solution that allows anybody to start their own blockchain with their own rules. This allows regulatory compliance to be built into systems. It allows institutions with high-value assets to put them on the blockchain, to digitize their valuable assets in a manner that's compliant with whatever jurisdiction they're in. So that has allowed us to create the kind of system that accommodates jurisdictional differences. And our goal, unlike everybody else in this space, is not to try to compete with the dollar. It is not to build a computer in the sky. It's to digitize all things. We are an asset digitization platform, and we have the architecture and scale necessary to tackle the 700 trillion worth of assets out there.
Hi, Evan. It's good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. I want to zoom out for a moment and ask like a very big picture question about crypto, since you've been in the space for such a long time. And I think the last time I saw you was a few years ago in Singapore, and we talked about the decentralization problem. And I'm just curious, like, what your thoughts are on that now, because there's been a lot of controversy, for example, over Web3, right? You have some thought leaders saying that Web3 isn't really decentralized and that it's too backed by venture capital. Then you have the whole institutional adoption question, which in some ways is a good thing, but also could be seen as more centralization. So I'm just curious, like, from your standpoint, what is the status of decentralization in crypto right now? Do you think it's getting better? Do you think it's getting worse? What's your take?
So if you look at it from the perspective of a regular person who is used to Web2 services, if you're a regular user of Facebook, if you're a regular user of Google, where we are essentially just webs and we're beholden to people who run the services, there is a huge step up, a huge step forward. Now, if you look at it from the perspective of a crypto native OG who's been around for some time, well, we're seeing a different trend. We used to have Bitcoin, we used to have systems like Ethereum, now we have systems like Avalanche, Solana, Luna. And so suddenly, and then now what we're seeing in addition to these is the emergence of essentially company-specific chains. So I'm not going to name names here, but there are chains essentially that are essentially decentralized in name only, where all the validators are run by the same set of folks. There is really a true center behind the scenes. When it comes to DeFi protocols, we see a similar situation. There is governance in name only. All the tokens are held by a handful of actors. So these are really problematic, depending on your view. I'm an optimist, and I like to see the glass as being half full. I think people are converting away from centralized platforms towards platforms that give you better assurance and better transparency. Even these single business run chains are actually better than what we used to have, which is you trust the entirety of your wealth to a custodian. So that's a step up, and it's a great starter point. And I think people who taste that will go on to truly decentralized platforms like Avalanche, where they can be assured that there is no single party behind the scenes who could censor transactions, revert them, and so on.
I'm going to guess that the blockchain you're talking about rhymes with finance smart chain. But nonetheless, how do you differentiate? How does the market differentiated Avalanche from these other players? And what do you think the market is getting right, and what do you think the market's getting wrong?
That's a great question. So Avalanche has seen enormous growth in, I would say, the last 6 months or so. Back in August, we had TVL of only 200 million. Now we have $11 billion in TVL. We used to have, the users were not that many in number. We now have about 1.8 million users with about 800,000 monthly actives. So that's been great growth. In addition, we have hundreds of dApps deployed with many, many to come. So the market is obviously seeing the value of a fast, cheap, reliable blockchain, a layer one that just works. And in the weeks prior, where we had market volatility and we saw some failures, Avalanche kept on ticking, and I think that's given people a lot of confidence. If I look at some other market data, if I look at TVL per market cap, I see that we are actually one of the lower ones, and that's actually interesting. That gives me, that tells me that perhaps the market hasn't quite yet understood that there's a discrepancy there, that this thing is actually pretty different, and the same valuations, if applied, would be pretty nice actually. So that's, I think, one of the things that the market gets wrong. The various other things that the market gets wrong, as you know, are the differentiation between these systems. They look at a system like Avalanche, they see the smart contract platform, and they think it's very similar to Ethereum, which it is. But Avalanche has a different architecture. Our contract chain is just one of many things we can do in parallel. We have 3 different chains in parallel at the moment, and we can have any number of additional ones deployed. So we're strictly larger than the other chains out there. So I think there is a little bit of information asymmetry there, and as that gap closes, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
I mean, just to close, I'm curious what your outlook is for Ethereum maybe over the next year or so, just in the sense that Avalanche and other chains are sort of not reacting, but offering alternatives to Ethereum and addressing problems that Ethereum can't solve. And so there's sort of like different takes on Ethereum. Some people are like, this is going to be Ethereum's year. It's going to like finally, come into its own. And then there's others that are like, no, it's actually going to go downhill. I'm just curious, what do you think is going to happen with Ethereum over the next year or so?
So here's what I think. I think there's tremendous growth ahead, and the chains that come out ahead are going to be the ones that can absorb that growth. Ethereum 1 in its current form is unable to absorb that growth, and Ethereum's future plans, its roadmap, is based on layer 2. They are throughput-oriented, layer 2-oriented system. Now, as they explore that path, there are some risks ahead. One of the big risks is that as they switch to layer 2, they end up turning over all of the MEV on their dApps to single entities. Whoever runs those layer 2 services ends up being in a prime position to front run their users, to sandwich their users, and so on. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they manage that. And layer 2s are going to be a profitable business potentially for the people who operate them, but they're going to be that profit is going to come at the expense of the users on those systems. In contrast, I think the layer 1 approach, scalable layer 1 approach, is a system, yields systems that are democratized, that are open to all, where the MEV is not in the hands of a single entity. We run as a space the risk of reinventing everything that exists in TradFi. And so it's incredibly easy to come up with a roadmap that takes your very nice system that has some flaws, that has, for example, a scalability bottleneck. And in the process of trying to scale it up, you end up reinventing the system as we know it. You end up reinventing the front running, the Citadels of the world, etc., the HFTs of the world. So that's one of my big worries. And ETH2, with its sharding approach, whether or not that will happen, ETH2 will end up happening in some form, but the sharding vision seems quite far. There are quite a few unsolved scientific problems. Mm-hmm. That's from my perspective, but Ethereum is still going to grow. There is so much interest and there's so much value in smart contract platforms that this area is poised for tremendous growth. And I think, as I said, the winners here are going to be those who can absorb that growth.
Excellent. Well, Emin, I see you sparring on Twitter with Vitalik over the Ethereum community and how those developments are going. So really interesting to hear that criticism, a lot of food for thought in that analysis. Thank you so much for joining us. That was Ava Labs founder and CEO, Emin Gun-Sarer. All right, that's it for First Mover. Thank you, Emily Parker and Lawrence Lewitton. I'm your host, Christine Lee. Meantime, check out The Hash at noon Eastern and All About Bitcoin at 3 o'clock, as well as NFT All-Stars at 4 p.m. You're watching CoinDesk TV. What a year. All right. Next up, stay tuned for the daily forecast to see what's happening in the Asia crypto markets.
Welcome to the Daily Forecast, February 8th, 2022. I'm Angie Lau, Editor-in-Chief of Forecast, covering all things blockchain. Well, just 1 week after exchanges in India welcomed news of a planned tax on crypto income, that initial joy has now been replaced by concerns over a lack of clarity. We're going to take a look at that story and a whole lot more coming up. Let's get you up to speed from Asia to the world. Well, let's kick off with the big stories we're keeping an eye on around Asia today. First up, Japan's largest bank plans to issue a stablecoin tied to the Japanese yen. According to Nikkei Asia, Mitsubishi UFJ is planning to launch the yen-pegged stablecoin next year, allowing instant settlement of securities transactions. Now, the megabank is aiming to cut costs and create efficiencies, especially if you compare it to similar fiat transactions, which currently take a couple of days to process. Well, it's also planning to incorporate blockchain technology into securities trading, opening doors for retail investors with less liquidity into assets like corporate bonds and real estate. The move follows Japan's Financial Services Agency announcing that authorized banks and wire transfer companies will be allowed to issue stablecoins from spring 2023. Now, over in Korea, crypto exchange Bithumb is going for gold in the Beijing Winter Olympics. The exchange promises to make an NFT drop every time the South Korean team wins a medal. Now, Bithumb is partnering with blockchain-based sports content platform 300fit on this Team Korea event. Every medal means any South Korean fan has a chance at 10 regular and 1 special NFT in the 24 hours following any medal successes. Bithumb looking into capitalizing on the national excitement and bring the virtual asset and sports industries together. But it's kind of hard to get a little too excited just yet. South Korea's medal tally is currently sitting at 0. You can find those stories and more at forecast.news. Meanwhile, in India, excitement over the new crypto law getting muddied by a lack of clarity. Exchanges had initially welcomed the 30% tax on income from crypto transfers announced in last week's budget. However, while it was seen as a sign of legitimizing the industry, questions are now emerging over how the laws will actually work. Forecast News' Monica Ghosh has more.
While the tax announced last Monday by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman quelled fears of a ban on crypto, the law has since raised more questions than it has answered. The 1% tax to be deducted by the buyer for transactions of over 10,000 rupees or 50,000 rupees for specific individuals is a particular concern for many, with 10,000 rupees worth around $130. It's an issue as buyers do not have access to the necessary information from the seller to pay the tax in advance as required by the law. Not only that, the advanced tax rate could exceed the returns daily traders expect to see, as well as taking a lot of extra time and effort to file. But one investor told Forecast it could have some benefit.
What it could potentially encourage is people doing more due diligence on the sort of tokens which actually make a difference, where the token actually captures value created by the project, and decide to hold those tokens and hold them for longer periods of time, as opposed to treating them as chips to be traded.
However, Gaitonde says there is still a lot of work to do, especially with clarifying the status of non-custodial wallets. Meanwhile, according to the Economic Times of India, the Blockchain and Crypto Assets Council met over the weekend to discuss concerns over how the tax could hit trading volumes. However, according to data from CoinGecko, that doesn't seem to have happened quite yet, with exchanges including WazirX and CoinDesk seeing a continued boost to the trading volumes. For Forecast News, I'm Monica Ghosh.
Well, the escalation in Eastern Europe between Russia and Ukraine has the world on edge. An all-out war would not only risk lives, obviously, in the region, but it can also have far-reaching consequences on energy markets as well as just about every other asset. So how will these developments impact the world of crypto? With Kelvin Lam, CEO of Lithium Finance, we're going to find out. He joins us now to break down the risks for the world of DeFi, and it's good to see you, Kelvin.
Good to be here, Angie.
You know, Kelvin, this serious threat of a possible war knocking on the Ukrainian door and really putting the world at edge, given that Russia is also the third largest player in Bitcoin mining and putting a lot of concerns in crypto right now. What impact could an actual war have on crypto assets in the region and in the DeFi space, you think?
We often like to describe Bitcoin in particular as a digital gold, but they've actually displayed more correlation to equities over time. So I'd like to think that the mounting tension is obviously sending shockwaves, particularly in oil and gas, as you mentioned, in commodities, and in particular Russian assets. But the overall global capital markets are generally focused on quantitative tightening these days, right? So, and if we look at the historical armed conflicts, it appears that there would be initial shocks, but the market also appears to generally not overreact in these conflicts. So my take would be that despite the shocks that we will be seeing, the medium or longer term negative impact is unlikely.
And that's one perspective. And I'm curious what you think about this. To make things more precarious even, the Russian central bank is talking about a complete ban on crypto activities and assets. How real, in your view, is a possibility of a crypto ban in the country? And do these rules apply in DeFi, or are the on-ramps and the off-ramps at risk here as well?
It's estimated that the Bitcoin holdings by Russians is estimated to be over $200 billion. That is almost 30% of the local index total market cap. So this is huge, and in real terms, I think it's probably more important to Russians than perhaps most other nations, right? So despite the fact that the Russian central bank has proposed a complete ban, President Putin has actually been reported to call for the government to work with the central bank to formulate regulations regulating crypto, right? So I think at this point, a blanket ban is rather unlikely as policy is leaning towards taxing and regulating, which I think could be a good thing for both the crypto world in general as well as DeFi, as these regulation, well thought out regulation, if you will, brings along certainty and could hopefully drive more mainstream adoption in the space.
Do you see this talk, though, about bans on crypto assets in Russia leading to a migration of potentially mining activities to neighboring regions? I mean, how could this play out, especially in light of geopolitical tensions as well as increasing pushback on rising energy prices? And if that's the case, what are the possible ripple effects in DeFi, if any?
In the unlikely event that a ban might happen, it is not the first time it's happening. Last year, China cracked down on crypto and banned all mining and trading activities. And following that, the Bitcoin hash rate or the global computing power for blockchain dropped significantly since China was the world's biggest mining nation at that time. Since then, however, we've seen that miners have quickly moved to US and elsewhere, and the hash rate has actually reached all-time high again recently, suggesting a full recovery. So I think the relative impact from any Russian ban would be much smaller than the Chinese crackdown last year. And if that experience is any indication, I think miners have displayed agility and flexibility in dealing with these changes in regulatory landscape.
It's almost like crypto is like water. It will always find a way, is what I'm hearing. Kelvin, as usual, it's really good to speak to you. We're going to be keeping our eyes, obviously, on this developing situation, but always appreciate your insights. And that's the daily forecast from us here in Asia to you everywhere around the world. For more, visit forecast.news. I'm Forecast Editor-in-Chief Angie Lau. Until the next time.